Why did you stop dancing? Is a question I have been asked more than I can remember. From my 9 years old till I was about 16, I used to break dance, I used to break almost every single day, and I quit. Why did I quit? There is no one answer that I can give you, but there is a psychological concept that I have come across that might give some insight and that might help you or some younger athlete who is struggling with motivation and who is struggling with the grind. As I like to call it. Back when I was around 14 years old, I remember there was this one move that I really wanted to learn. It's called an air flare. So I tried an air flare and I failed. And I had a hard time. Why? I tried, I failed, and I pretty quickly came to the conclusion that I couldn't do an air flare. And then I saw some other b-boys of the same age and they did air flares like it was nothing. So that pretty much confirmed my chain of thought. Either I could do a move or I couldn't do a move. Now maybe I watched too much Star Wars.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Do or do not, there is no try. But that's the way I was thinking back then. After quitting, I learned a lot more about human psychology, and there was a book that I stumbled upon that gave me incredible insight in my way of thinking back then. And that book is called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And Carol Dweck is a psychologist who did research because she wanted to know why some people face challenges head on and other people try to avoid challenges at all costs whenever they arise. And in her book, she talks about two mindsets. There's the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The fixed mindset is characterized by thinking in really static terms. Either you can do something or you can't do something. My aforementioned mindset, the way I was thinking when I wanted to learn that new move, is a perfect example of a fixed mindset. Yet there was only one small thing I had to change. There was only one small word I had to add to my way of thinking to change my fixed mindset into a growth mindset. So instead of saying I can't do air flares, I had to say or think I can't do air flares yet. Now, changing this seemingly insignificant expression would have changed my whole way of thinking. Back to my breaking career. When I was about 10 years old, there was another move I really wanted to learn called a flare. Now, what did I do? I started trying to do flares. My first attempt sucked. They probably sucked harder than my first attempt to do air flares. But I kept on going. And a year or two later, I could do flares. I automatically believed that if I just kept training flares, eventually I would learn how to do flares. My thinking was I can't do flares yet. Another important difference between me as a 10-year-old and my mindset then and my mindset as a 14-year-old was when I was 10 years old and trying to learn a new move, I didn't really see myself as someone who was good at something, a good b-boy or a bad b-boy. I just wanted to learn a new move, so I started training that new move. By the time I was 14, I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, wow, you do some really amazing stuff. Wow, you're really good at that. Oh my God, this is crazy. Oh my God, it's amazing. And the fucked up thing was I started to believe what they said. I started to think that I was good at something. You might think that this is not that big of a deal, but hear me out. Because I had an image of myself as being a good b-boy, a good dancer, whenever I tried a new move and failed, that failure would challenge the image of myself as being good at something. So evidently, I got out of the way when challenges would arise. I went from a growth mindset into a fixed mindset. From being free to try and fail to being something that's fixed and having to defend my position as being good at something. So a perfect example of going from a growth mindset into a fixed mindset. This stalled my evolution as a dancer, and honestly it took the fun out of training. So I didn't feel like going to training anymore because whenever I went training I would challenge my image of being good at something because I would fail all the time. Now that you know the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset, I'm thinking, what would I say to myself if I could go back and see my 15-year-old self? There are 3 things that I would definitely tell him. First, write down how you would act, would feel, would be if you had this growth mindset. How would you face challenges? How would you feel when something happens that's in your control or out of your control? it's not easy to hit a target if you don't know what the target looks like. So if you want to embrace this growth mindset, you should know what it looks like for you personally. So write down for yourself how you would act, how you would feel, what you would do if you had this growth mindset. What kind of person would you be? So that's the first thing I would tell myself. Write it down. Write it down, and when I say write it down, I mean write it down with pen and paper, not in your phone, not on your computer. Don't underestimate the power of writing stuff down. Secondly, I would tell myself, communicate in a way that shows that you know the progress, the process behind results. So whenever you see someone do something crazy, don't say, wow, that's amazing, you're very talented. Tell them, wow, that's crazy, you must have practiced a lot. You must have put in a lot of time and effort to learn your craft, to learn your skill. Because that's a much fuller compliment. If you just say, wow, you're very talented, you neglect all the hard work, time, and effort that someone has put into their craft. So whenever you communicate, try to communicate in a way that shows that you respect and you know the process behind results. So that's the second thing I would tell myself. And then the third one is probably a bit less practical, but I think it's very important. I would tell myself, you want struggle. You want failure, you want challenge, you want it to be hard. For example, take Lord of the Rings. If you had Frodo, and Gandalf comes up to him, he says, yo Frodo, I got this ring, man, you gotta take it to the volcano, it's very, very dangerous, you gotta take it to a volcano, throw it in there, and then you have to get back to the Shire. Now, it's a pretty long road, so maybe you don't want to go alone. Frodo's like, okay, sure man, no problem, can I take Sam with me? Samwise, he's like, yeah, sure, man, do whatever you want. So he goes out to Sam. He says, yo, Sam, I gotta take this ring to the volcano. You wanna come with me? Sam's like, yeah, man, sure. I ain't got nothing planned. Let's go. So they go on their hike towards Mordor, and they fight the volcano. And well, there's nobody there, so they just they throw in the ring. And while they're walking back, they text the Uber. The Uber driver's right outside of the gates of Mordor. They get into the taxi, they get into the car, and he drives them back to the Shire, and they're back on time for dinner, some tea and some biscuits, you know? That's boring. It's boring as fuck. Nobody would watch that movie. Nobody. So it might be a ridiculous example, but trying to make the point that you want the struggle, you want the adventure, you want it to be hard. You have to understand that something's worth is directly linked with how hard it was to attain. So if it comes very easy to you, you won't really treasure it that much. So if something's hard, if something takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, you can be sure that'll be worth it. So that being said, there are 3 things I would tell myself is write down what a growth mindset looks like for you. Communicate in a way that makes you aware of the process that's behind results. And remember that you want struggle. You want stuff to be hard. You want to fail, because without failure, there is no success. So there you have it. Whenever you feel like you can't do something, try and add the word yet to it. So try to keep in mind that growth mindset. It will bless you with a sense of freedom. A freedom to fail and a freedom to learn. I hope this video helps you. I take a lot of time in editing these, so I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace. And then the third one is probably very nice.